Where are you? Where is Aaron right now? You done messed up, Aaron!
Aaron is here with Jeff Augustine. Thanks for joining me, Jeff.
Hey, Aaron, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. So what we're going to discuss today is Scientology's secret agents exposed. And we're going to start with Rodney Riley. Now, let me just tell everyone right from the beginning, your blog, Scientology Money Project. And actually, is that also the name of your YouTube channel?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
You have documented extensively Rodney Riley's, not only his history, but his connection to wealthy Scientologist Trish Duggan, another Scientologist. I always forget his name. It's Epstein, and he's up like around the Virginia area, right? What's his name?
Oh, it's Megan and Stephen Epstein, Nashville, Tennessee. Yeah, they've been in the real estate business for a while.
You've documented the relationships between all these people, and Tracy McManus just reported in the Tampa Bay Times this past week how all these people have been involved in what I'm going to call an undercover operation to buy property for Scientology and help them, put pieces into motion behind the scenes to develop something. Mike Rinder has speculated that it's actually a new advanced org for Scientology, since their current advanced org in Clearwater is about to become obsolete when a giant outdoor concert venue is opened up right next door, making it almost impossible to do auditing sessions in their advanced org, which is where Scientology delivers the upper OT levels.
Correct.
So, so I wanted to bring you on and have you explain what you've learned about Rodney Riley, the connection to Stephen Epstein, and any of these other people who in the past have acted as agents for Scientology to do exactly what they're trying to do right now.
Well, yeah, let's go back to do some history for newer Scientology watchers. And this is important. When Scientology came to Clearwater, and some of your listeners may not know this, but in 1975, L. Ron Hubbard decided to go ashore. He had been at sea for 6-7 years on the Apollo. And they were coming into Savannah, Georgia. They got news over the radio that the FBI was there waiting. So the ship went down to Curacao and floated around for a while. So when Flag, which was where L. Ron Hubbard was, of course, he's the Commodore, they purchased the Fort Harrison bank building in Clearwater surreptitiously under the name of United Churches of Florida. And then Clearwater residents became aware that it was actually the Church of Scientology. And of course, if you know, they framed Mayor Gabe Casares in a fake hit and run accident. They pulled a lot of operations. So going back earlier on the chain, as they say in Scientology, the church's presence in Clearwater began with deception. Moving forward, they purchased Gold Base out in San Jacinto, California, under false pretenses. They paid cash. They called themselves the Scottish Highlands Quietude Club.
The Quietude Club.
Yeah, Hubbard got a kick out of the Scottish Highlands Quietude Club. So they purchased that. When L. Ron Hubbard fled from the area of Gold Base and went up to Creston with Pat Nanny Broker, they purchased his ranch up there using fake names for cash. He used the name Jack Farnsworth. And,
is there any inside joke with that name or anything?
There probably is, but it's just Jack Farnsworth. So
okay,
he was that. And Pat Nanny said that he was their older uncle. Okay. And there's an amusing story that one time the neighbor up there, it's ranch country, meandered over to see if he could borrow a tool, and Ron was out filing a piece of metal in the shed. And when the neighbor approached, Ron ran off into the house. So zero confront for Jack Farnsworth. So something I wanted to go to. This is interesting before we get into the present situation where they're trying to buy, develop the North Marina. There's a story, and this is really interesting, and you can Google it. In 2005, the St. Petersburg Times, which is now Tampa Bay Times, they reported a story on two Scientologists, and these guys are Ben Kugler, Kugler, and Ron Pollack.
Yeah.
They had zero experience in real estate development. And yet they created a company called Triangle Development, and they were going to build two 15-story condo towers on the bluffs overlooking Clearwater Harbor. And so, long story short, they acquired about 6.5 acres of land. They raised, I think, $12 million, and then they went bankrupt. So the Church of Scientology purchased 5 acres of land for $10 million in 2005. So that was another way Scientology bought land out of a bankrupt project.
So that property that they purchased 2005. Now, I'm not good at math, Jeff, because I grew up in a cult.
Yeah.
But how many years ago was 2005?
Yeah, 2005.
How many years ago was that?
Well, see, that would be 18 years.
Okay. That land has sat there undeveloped this entire time, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it says it's right next to the sandcastle.
Yeah. And it's been undeveloped this entire time.
So it's interesting. If they wanted a new advanced organization, they could build it on those 5 acres.
They could, but it's not much farther away from the park than I'd have to double check on a map, but I don't think it's much further away from the park than where the sandcastle already is.
Okay, but there's a giveaway here. Mike Rinder mentioned, and I'm reading some, if I'm not looking at the camera directly with my TRs, I'm reading. Now, here's what's really interesting. And this is kind of the giveaway. These condos, the article states that they were going to build these condos to be soundproof, to have like solid core doors and soundproofing so that people, Scientologists who bought them, could do their solo auditing sessions in quiet.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting.
So they were already thinking we needed a quiet place with solid core doors so that they would be solo knots perfect.
Huh.
So this tells me they're already thinking of Scientology in development. And that's fascinating because that's purpose-built condo.
That's great. Yeah.
If you're thinking of designing around doing, auditing your BTs each day, but you have to go on 4 or 5 times a day for short sessions, 10, 15 minutes, in the cans.
Yeah.
And, but another interesting thing they said, and this, you'll like this article, and I'll send you the link so you can put it in your show notes. But basically they said that there's no market for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of condos because Scientologists wouldn't buy them. Meaning that
the article,
not 100. Pardon me?
The article says that.
Yeah. That they said that we're going to, we're only going to build so many because, Scientologists we think will be the primary purchasers of the condos, but there's not hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Scientologists in Clearwater to buy that many condos.
Right.
And there was another, one of the developers, Elias Jafif, he was going to develop another 4 acres with hundreds of high-end condos. So, before 2008, the meltdown in 2008, there were several Scientologists wanting to build projects. And so Brian Ongst, is that his name?
Brian Ongst Jr., yep.
Okay, well, at this time, in 2005, Clearwater Mayor Brian Ongst, I guess that was senior.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Well, he actually put down a $5,000 deposit to buy a unit.
No way.
No, it's among the 90 people who put down $5,000 is former Clearwater Mayor Brian Ongst.
From the Scientology developers. Wow, amazing.
Yeah. He said, but he noted that he has not signed a contract because he would see the new expanded plans before he committed. So they seized, they were able to purchase the land. Pat Harney said, we don't have any plans for the land. And I guess, 18 years later, they still don't. So given the surreptitious history of land acquisition, when I first heard of this project, where I went to in my mind was David Gentili, was going to go in with Larry Feldman, who's a Scientologist in Clearwater, and they were going to build the biggest condo project in Tampa. And then, of course, David Gentili had committed to about $125 million of financing, if I recall. And then that project fell apart. They had acquired a lot of land and did a lot of work. And so Feldman's project falls apart. So there's always been a history of Scientologists. And look, in Clearwater, Scientology business people legitimately own businesses. So, but this other development seemed strange. This whole story seems strange. because $350 million with an unknown guy named Rod Riley, that got my curiosity up. Because normally when you talk about that kind of money, you have someone who has had a title of CEO, Chief Executive Officer, Chief Financial Officer, Executive Vice President. And coming out of corporate like I do, you look at titles, and he was a mid-level corporate guy who was subordinate to executive management. So that didn't make sense. And he also, the other thing, Aaron, he has no social media presence, unlike Grant Cardone, who's well known. And Grant's been able to use his social media presence to raise upwards of, I think, about $1.8 billion. So he has a lot of investors. Rod Riley, who are his investors? Where's this money coming from? And then in my research, I saw he's connected to Ozsan, who's Trish Duggan's money manager.
Right.
And there's a company called Deuterium Partners, and it's on my blog. And basically, he has about $134 million in discretionary funds. I think
Who does?
857 million. Anyway,
who does?
Osman Ozsan is managing that much money for one client.
I got it. Now, I'm just going to try to explain some things for the viewers.
Sure.
So Trish Duggan, very wealthy Scientologist. Her wealth comes from having been married to and then subsequently divorcing Scientologist billionaire Bob Duggan. So Trish Duggan is sitting there with probably a few $100 million. We don't know for sure. Maybe 100. We don't know. How much money do we think Trish has?
About $1 billion.
We think Trish herself has about $1 billion?
Yeah. If you look at...
okay. That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
And so this other guy, Osman, what's his name?
Osman Ozsan.
Osman Ozsan. I'll never remember that.
He's in my opinion, he's one of the most influential Scientologists you've never heard of.
So that's what I was going to ask you. So he's Trish's money manager, and he is himself also a Scientologist.
Correct.
Okay. And so then we have Stephen Epstein up in North Carolina, who himself is a Scientologist.
Well, no, he's in Nashville. He and his wife Megan Epstein are in Nashville.
I'm always going to get that wrong as well.
It's okay.
I'm doing my best. I grew up in a cult. Forgive me. So
I did too, by the way. It was just the Pentecostals, so we share that.
So we have these 3 Scientologists, all of whom either have a lot of money or are connected to money, who bring in Rodney Riley to be the public face of this project, pretending that it's got nothing to do with Scientology.
Yeah.
Tracy McManus in her reporting has made it crystal clear like this whole thing's been exposed. What was it that you saw in Rodney's background? I mean, anything more than what you just described? Because you've been reporting on this for a couple of years. I feel like you found out a year or two ago that this whole thing was a sham. Rodney Riley was just a fake front man. What was it that you found in his history that indicated that?
Well, it's like I said, I spent 30 years in corporate on deals. You know, I worked primarily for Siemens and then the Dutch giant Philips. So when you're putting together deals, you look for job titles, experience, description. You look like, you know, people would approach me as a regional manager. You want to do this deal, and I'd look into their finances. Do you have the money to do it? Do you have the experience? What's your depth? What's your patent? So you look at qualifications, and it doesn't make sense. And I do a lot of investigation as a PI into financial matters. That's my specialty. Regulation D, Regulation A, crypto. So you also look at the money. The two things have to match, Aaron. You have to have someone of a caliber who you would entrust with $350 million. They have to have the experience.
Right.
And they have to have the background to do a $350 million development, because this is a lot of money. And there's a lot of things that could go wrong in that kind of development. One of the tip-offs was he said he was working with Gensler. And their Scientology's, you know, construction management design firm.
Right.
So the Gensler was a giveaway because Scientology's worked with Gensler for a long time. Rodney Riley doesn't have. Here's what you do when you present yourself. You say, "Here's the projects I worked on," and you go down a list of big money projects. I worked on this golf course, this development, this project. There was a lack of names. And normally you want bragging rights. Like if let's say if I had worked on the Getty Museum And I did when I was in lighting. I did some consulting on the Getty. I was one of many lighting professionals. Okay. And some of my clients were building for the Getty. So I can say I worked on the Getty. I can say I worked for Monterey Bay Research Aquarium Institute, MBARI, on a scientific device. I can say I worked at Los Alamos Labs. And so I can throw out names of prestigious clients that I worked for in scientific equipment, Raytheon. And this guy couldn't do it. And I just saw it, checking his LinkedIn page. And this is where people can do their own investigation. You look at their LinkedIn page, it's like a mid-level guy. You would never, in my opinion, you'd never give him 350 million. So he's brought in for some reason. Right. I personally, now see, I put myself in the role of how I would do it. Remember when we had the discussion of how I would actually do, if I were Zeno, how I would actually pull off Incident 200T3?
Yes.
I reverse engineered it. That's how I would do it. So like, if I were going to build a $350 million development and I were CEO, who would I hire to do it? I wouldn't hire this guy. He doesn't have the credentials. I would hire a bigger player, who maybe worked on, say, a golf course that developed by Jack Nicholson along with a resort, something in Rancho Mirage, something that was big, right? Biltmore, something like that.
Yeah.
So that makes you suspicious when you're doing investigation. And I see this in crypto a lot, where people claim to have credentials.
Yeah.
Like in FTX, that guy had no credentials, and I don't know why people trust him with money. Theranos, the same thing. She didn't have the credentials. So that's what tipped me off, is this, it doesn't match. It doesn't fit. Because Aaron, really, if you were investing 350 million, would you hire someone who had been an executive vice president or a CEO, or would you hire a mid-level regional person?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, you've got to be able to look at this guy's background and go, yes, it looks like this looks like a guy you would hire for a project. You don't you don't hire a guy for the first time who's tackling. You don't hire a guy for that project who's tackling it for the first time. You want to see that he's got experience, a track record, and proven history in this area.
Yeah, you're not going to hire a mid-level manager.
Now, Jeff, am I wrong? Doesn't he personally have a bankruptcy not that long ago in his history, and or maybe conflating him with somebody else?
No, he has a 2011, and look, it's no crime to go bankrupt. It's a rough world. People go bankrupt. There's no crime in that. But he had a personal bankruptcy in 2011, and that's a matter of public record. In the United States, and your foreign watchers may not know that, but in the United States, bankruptcies are a matter of public record. So in checking him out, and I found it online. It's easy to find him online. You don't need any special database. I found he had a personal bankruptcy. Now, that in and of itself is another indicator that if I were the Church of Scientology and its operatives and its people and the Epsteins, I would have vetted the guy. I would have vetted the guy and looked for someone with more horsepower, lack of a bankruptcy. It's just like,
okay, you're saying you vetted him so that it didn't look so suspicious.
Well, what you want is someone who you want someone who's whistle clean, right?
True, but what about the idea that if it was someone who was totally whistle clean and on the up and up, they wouldn't want to be involved in a project that they knew was just a work? I mean, unless I'm giving people in this industry too much credit.
No, this is what I like about you, Aaron. You know how to think like Scientology thinks. We want someone who will play ball, right?
Yeah, they want someone who will play ball and just has a patina, the slightest patina of legitimacy, but only on the surface.
Well, exactly. And the other thing that bothered me, and this just comes from business savvy, and the first thing he says in this press release that came out is that I've worked with the Mormons, the Latter-day Saints in Utah in development, so I know I can work with Scientologists. That hit me wrong because, Aaron, nobody asked him that question.
Right. He's asking
and
questions.
In business, it's a rule. You do not talk when you're doing business, you do not talk religion and you don't talk politics. You talk business. And all my deals, during working hours, you don't talk religion or politics. In fact, you try to stay away from them. You don't want to offend anybody. Capitalists are in business to make money.
Yeah.
Okay. So someone's religion, it doesn't come up. You would never say, oh, well, I've worked with the Baptists, so I can work with the Scientologists. Well, nobody asked, what's that got to do with anything? I work with the Mormons.
Well, right. And also, he wasn't presumed at the time to be working with the Scientologists. In fact, that would have been a strike against him. So why is he talking about how willing he is to work with the Scientologists? He was never even open about the fact that his investors were Scientologists. In fact, and correct me if I'm wrong here, the only place Scientology was popping up on the radar is somehow he was expecting us to believe that he was this outsider who came into town and convinced all of these Scientologists to sell him their property.
Yeah, and apropos of what? And again, if you have that much property, you're going to want to work with someone who has credentials and can actually do it.
Right.
So he comes in saying, to me, he says the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't have, like I said, the other big flag to me was no social media presence, because big name developers have social media presence.
Right.
They're out there. You know who they are. They've got websites. When I looked for his website, he doesn't have a website. He'd always been an employee.
Yeah.
So again, you start adding up all the things that don't make sense. And that's what came to my attention.
Right. Okay. So that's Rodney Riley. Is there anything, and I'm approaching this particular discussion from the interests or the point of view of the Clearwater locals who want to understand more about how Scientology is trying to screw them. We know about Rodney Riley. He's probably dead in the water at this point. I don't think any projects associated with Rodney have any chance of moving forward in the city of Clearwater. Is there anything more we need to know about Epstein or Trish Duggan? Because here's the thing about Trish. She has some credibility. She created the Glass Museum in St. Pete, a very well-known, well-respected museum of glassworks down in St. Pete, Florida, which is, 20, 25 minutes south of Clearwater. And I can tell you, she and her experience in the arts and her hundreds of millions of dollars have wooed over a lot of the members of Clearwater's political establishment and social elite. She's got these guys wrapped around her finger. A middle-aged woman with money and a love for the arts. Oh man, like people love Trish Duggan. They love that. They love that Trish Duggan money. So I don't know. What should the people of Clearwater know about Trish Duggan? Is it even possible for her to do legitimate works in Clearwater?
Oh, I don't know what role Trish Duggan has in this, aside from, supplying the money. So I don't, a couple things I don't know.
Okay.
The money appears to be coming from Trish Duggan. A couple of years ago,
Trish was campaigning to the city government to let her buy the city hall building. I'm not shitting you.
Oh, I believe it. Real estate's a good thing to buy. Trish Duggan, I think, is the money behind it, obviously, because if you look at the Epsteins, you look at the other players, Rod Riley, they don't have the money.
Yeah.
So I think obviously Mike Rinder had it right that David Miscavige wants to build a new advanced org up in North Marina.
Right.
And the perfect cover is to have this white knight act like he's developing and have the development go wrong. And just like that development that went wrong where the church bought the 5 acres for $10 million.
Yeah.
They could step in once it's zoned and buy it because they have ready cash.
Yeah.
And in this economy, which is so horrible, let me divert for a minute. The Church of Scientology is good at playing the long game. And let me give you an example of that. Do you remember the big brouhaha when David Miscavige wanted to get the road at Gold Base in San Jacinto closed down, the state road?
Yes.
Gilman Springs Hot Road. Well, Gold Base is bisected. A road cuts right down the middle of it on either side called Gilman Springs Road. Correct?
Yes.
Now, around 2007, 2008, an anonymous, so 2007, 2008, David Miscavige and the Church of Scientology made a move with local politician Jeff Stone, who was a supervisor, Riverside County, to get that section of the road closed. And it was used by hundreds of thousands of local residents. It's a main thoroughfare. But because it interfered with David Miscavige's sleep in the villas, he wanted it closed. He also wanted it closed so people couldn't blow from the base like Mark Headley did.
Right.
So for all kinds of reasons, he wanted this road closed. And I studied that at the time. And here's what I found. That road was owned by the state of California. So there was some moves made to get the land transferred to the county of Riverside. Because if it was owned by the state, Scientology and its attorneys had zero chance of getting a state road closed. Zero. But if they could get it to the county where they had Jeff Stone and other political support, they had an opportunity, a much better opportunity to get the road closed. And they made arguments that it was a dangerous road and it should be closed. And they really made a run at closing a public road. But because of earthquakes, fire hazard, the number of daily commuters, the county said no, and they were raising hell. And here's something that's really funny. You'll like, Aaron, because you did grow up in Scientology. The county finally got sick of it, of them demanding the road be shut. So they said, okay, Scientology, we'll shut the road as long as you pay for a new one. And that would have meant Scientology would have had to pay for all the land, to buy the land for a new road, planning, infrastructure, and actually pay for the road, which could have been $10 million a mile, for miles and miles. In Scientology, as long as taxpayers are footing the bill, they don't care. They took out PPP loans and then asked for forgiveness, right?
Right.
So as long as they can be pigs feeding at the trough and other people pay, they don't care. But when they had to pay for the road, project died. So in this, if Miscavige is already ruined the downtown, arguably ruined the economy of downtown Clearwater, there's going to be opposition to him taking over North Marina. So he's going to use a stalking horse. He's going to do it covertly, just like L. Ron Hubbard bought Clearwater, bought the Fort Harrison and the bank building, in the 1975.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely.
They tend, in Scientology, it's a maxim: follow the successful action. Correct?
Sure. But I think the point that you're making there is actually very interesting, which is that it's not the challenge that Scientology would face to doing this, constructing this new advanced org, isn't just that people don't want Scientology to have one more building. It's that once they get that building in that area, you can count on them trying to sabotage the commercial activity around that area, just like they've done in downtown Clearwater. That's what people in Clearwater are concerned about, even more than, oh no, Scientology is going to have one more building that they're going to take off the tax rolls. I think the people of Clearwater are starting to understand that when the way Flag thinks about its flag land base and the way they treat the flag land base is they want to keep as many non-Scientologists away from their upper level buildings as possible. And that's the big threat to having a new Scientology advanced org a few miles north of downtown Clearwater. Is now there'll be a completely brand new part of Clearwater that Scientology's trying to sabotage. And so the issue is much bigger than one more building for Scientology.
Well, that's how I read it. It's an attempt to lock up downtown Clearwater and now lock up North Marina.
Yeah. But again, and some people might disagree with me on this, Jeff, that it's not that Clearwater has some grand master plan to take over the entire city. I mean, I know that they say that they wanted Clearwater to be the first Scientology city, but let's be honest, Jeff, they say that about every city. Yeah. I mean, they wanted Africa to become the first Scientology continent. It's like, oh, okay. And they wouldn't be trying to build this new advanced org unless they had to. And they do have to, because the current advanced org is going to become obsolete. Anyway, I just lost my train of thought. I feel like I was starting to contradict you, but I wanted to explain how I wasn't really contradicting you. And then
I agree with you. I think it is a plot to sabotage development in North Marina. That's my opinion. What was interesting, Aaron, is the church pre-pandemic commissioned a study from a Florida university, and this was they claimed that Scientology's contributions to direct and indirect economic impact on Clearwater was $916 million a year.
I remember that. It was all
well, and they projected that by 2020 they would have a $2 billion economic impact on Clearwater. In fact, they made this ridiculous chart where they claimed a quick comparison to your area. The Church of Scientology put in $917 million in contribution, and NASA operations in Florida only contributed $900 million. They're bigger than NASA. And yet, going back to that development I mentioned with Kugler and Pollack, they said there were not hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Scientologists. So my thinking is that they're going to build a new AO, and then they would build these condos that Scientologists would primarily buy.
Yeah.
And it becomes like the Scientology ghetto, upscale ghetto. I made an argument in 2007 that where we're headed is what's called Monastary Scientology, and that Scientology will contract down to Clearwater and it'll service ultra wealthy Scientologists.
I mean, if that occurred, it would be in spite of their best efforts, not because of them, in my opinion, at least. And the reason I say that, Jeff, is because Miscavige is never going to give the staff members and the Sea Org members at all the other orgs and the continental units permission to not continue to try and grow Scientology. Now, Scientology isn't growing, so you go, well, what does that mean, not continue to try? All the staff members and Sea Org members who work in these orgs and these continents are in a lot of trouble for the fact that they're not that their stats aren't up. They're not working hard enough to get their stats up. In order for Miscavige to switch strategies and say, okay, we're just going to pull in the tentacles and retreat to Clearwater, he would basically have to give all those other people in those continents sort of a get out of jail free card. He'd give them a pass. Okay, you're no longer in trouble. You don't have to keep expanding those continents. And the thing is, we've never heard that. All these people who we helped leave the Sea Organization have never said, yeah, we were told, COB said he understands why the stats are down in the continents. He doesn't care anymore. We're just going to concentrate on Clearwater. And so I think, what did you call it? You didn't say Montessori. Monastery?
Monastary Scientology, yeah.
I think if it ended up that way, it would be despite his efforts. Like, that's what it would get reduced down to, perhaps, and they couldn't help it. Do you know what I mean? But I don't know that it would be the goal, but that doesn't mean it couldn't end up that way.
Well, my argument when I made Monastary Scientology is that Clearwater, flag land base, if you will, would be intended for the elite of Scientology. And it would be wealthy people. Now, that doesn't mean they give up their outposts. Every day, when I go to my bank, I go down Sunset Boulevard, I go past Pac Base, and really it goes by in the blur of an eye. You just see, Big Blue.
Yeah.
And it's there. It's never crowded. I got to tell you, if you come here at night, any night, and if you're in town and you want to visit with me, I'll take you by. I could literally go bowling with my friends all night on L. Ron Hubbard Way. We could go bowling all night on that street and not be interrupted. It's a ghost town.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Now, when I go down Hollywood Boulevard, I pass the Christian Science reading room that's been there since before I was born, way back in 1957. It's been there forever. So Christian Science reading room, and the comparison's been made before. It's not, unique to me. The outlying Scientology orgs are going to become the next generation of Christian Science reading rooms. They're going to be there.
Wait, are you saying the Christian Science reading room is empty or packed?
It's empty all the time.
It isn't. They're always empty all the time. There's one. Did you know there's one right here in downtown Clearwater?
No, I didn't.
I've never seen anybody in it.
No, and there's nobody in mine. But my point is, the Christian Scientists management has not closed down the reading rooms.
I see that. You're saying that's what the orgs will become.
Yeah, that's what I think. The orgs will become largely Christian Science reading rooms.
Yeah.
And you'll have them manned, and there'll still be some perfunctory talk about a large policy of growth, and they might get someone in doing a life improvement course here and there.
Yeah.
But the real emphasis, okay? So to save face for buying all that real estate, you're going to keep some outposts open. But even, we have seen orgs consolidated, Dan Foundation consolidated. That happened out here.
Sure.
And haven't we seen Class 5s become Sea Org orgs?
No.
No?
You've seen Sea Org members sent into Class 5 orgs as a make wrong by David Miscavige because they couldn't find enough staff, but they're not Sea Org orgs. Like that, they're not Sea Org orgs now.
Okay. Well, thank you for the correction. I grew up as a Pentecostal, so I don't understand Scientology.
Unless you might actually be referring to the Los Angeles org itself, which is a Class 5 org that was fully converted into a Sea Org org. So that
that's what I was referring to. Yeah.
So that the PAC base would be, that was what was always weird about the PAC base is you had the two of the three orgs were Sea Org orgs, and yet the feeder line to those two orgs was this non-Sea Org org with a substandard shoddy staff from a Sea Org perspective, that they were like, screw this, we're going to control this entire base from bottom to the top, and they turned that into a Sea Org org. But you're not going to see any other outlier Class 5 orgs turn into Sea Org orgs.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Can I run another datum by you, to use a Scientology term?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, and here's what's happening now. On L. Ron Hubbard Way, the street just to the east of it, the one street over, is a residential street. So I want to run this question by you because I think it aligns with what we're talking about. Okay, now AOLA is right there on L. Ron Hubbard Way and Fountain.
Yeah.
You know the building, right?
Yep.
Okay, so right behind it, they're building a new beautiful upscale luxury condo building on that street, and that street's going to be gentrified.
On which street?
The one street just east of L. Ron Hubbard Way, one street over.
Okay, got it.
I don't know the name I forget the name of the street.
That's okay.
But they're building this new like 3 or 4-story luxury condo building, and they're building a lot of them in Hollywood and East Hollywood. So that means you're going to have this WOG luxury condo building looking right down on AO, which makes me think, if I were, AOLA public, I'd want to go to Flag if they had a new North Marina building, because face it, Miscavige has always loved real estate. In fact, I think he's a dramatizing interior decorator, and he spends a lot of time going over carpet swatches and marble, just salivating. He's like a frustrated architect. And there was a dictator, I don't recall his name, but he painted postcards. He was a frustrated architect as well.
So now look, we've heard of Miscavige having a big problem with proposed Clearwater developments that would look down on the Fort Harrison and look down on the Flag building. But that's because the top of the Fort Harrison is a penthouse suite that you can see into, and that Tom Cruise could stay there sometimes, or Miscavige could stay there, or whatever. And also at the Flag building, the big giant building, there are cafes on the top of that building. Like there's it's actually it's a utilized space. Whereas the top of AOLA, I don't know that a human being has ever set foot on the roof of AOLA.
I don't either, but all I'm saying is that Miscavige is so in love with architecture and construction. And I think the appeal of it, like a sexy new North Marina AO.
Yes.
That would have an appeal to Scientologists. It's private. It's not at Flag. If you build it more upscale for elite, OT, wealthy Flag public, that's just something else to titillate them with. This is brand new.
And also it would have that nice. It's not that the North Marina is a nicer area than where the current AO is. It's just that it's the next best option, because there's nowhere to expand. There's nowhere to move south from where the Sandcastle currently is. You can only move north, and this area is it's a little more secluded from downtown. And it's also the way they would build it up. It would have nice water views, which that's what's going to be really difficult for Miscavige to find land that's affordable, that's on the water, and that's not that far from downtown Clearwater. So it's almost like this location is really the perfect location. If you had to pick somewhere other than Sandcastle, the perfect location. And the fact that his plans for this have been completely blown out of the water now. I don't know what Miscavige does next. I don't know.
Well, David Miscavige is many things, and he's certainly belligerent. Now, just going back for a minute, here's another thing that didn't add up. If Scientologists were going to really develop luxury condos and real estate open to everyone, they would have bragged about it, right?
Of course, yeah.
They would have said, the critics are wrong. We're interested in investing in Clearwater and why we're going to build all this waterfront projects.
Yeah, so and it's not like there isn't precedent, Jeff. It's not, there's already Scientologists who have successfully developed giant residential, commercial, mixed-use properties. It's not like being a Scientologist would have destroyed the project.
Yeah. No, in fact, it would have been a PR coup to say we're gonna help build a North Marina. It's for everybody.
Yes,
but like I said, and that's why I went back to the earlier 2005 project where they said we're going to build a luxury condo with solid core doors and soundproofing, so you can.
Right.
So I tend to think that this was an operation, and Ben Shaw's just crazy, insane letter that the Church of Scientology is not involved in this.
Yeah.
Be careful of when Scientology says something, you have to listen as much as what they're not saying as what they're saying. So Ben Shaw said the Church of Scientology is not involved in this, but he didn't say the Church of Scientology doesn't know about this.
Yeah. And the truth is, nobody, it's Mike Rinder who has floated this very sound theory about the new advanced org. The Tampa Bay Times didn't accuse the Church of Scientology of anything. The Tampa Bay Times called out the Scientologists who were working behind the scenes to manipulate public perception and being dishonest with the city about this project. Ben Shaw, as an official representative of Scientology, coming out and writing this really over the top, hyperbolic, hateful letter about the Tampa Bay Times kind of gave the story away. Scientology should have said, no comment. We have nothing to, and left it at that.
Yeah, it sort of gets into the more you deny it, the more we know it's true.
Yeah.
The meeting style death protest too much. What was interesting is when Tracy McManus did her story, Clear Takeover, her magnificent story, there were some email exchanges, and it was brought to the attention of Gary Soder, an attorney who works for the Church of Scientology. And he said, and I think this was disingenuous, we didn't know that our parishioners owned so much land. It delighted us to find out how much land they owned.
Oh yeah,
I thought, oh come on, they know when you peed 30 lifetimes ago on your whole track. They're gonna know exactly down to the penny. And these reg cycles, they know what you own. They know
the balances on your credit cards, the balances in your bank accounts. Oh my God, he bought 12 parcels in downtown Clearwater. That's news to us.
How did we didn't know? But we're delighted to find out.
It's so stupid.
No, I mean, because the church works so closely with its parishioners, especially on an operation like this.
Yeah.
And it'd be an example of a very surreptitious plan. And it's, again, the long game, because Scientology is good at the long game. So you move pieces across the chessboard.
Yeah, exactly.
But in this case, Rod Riley, in my opinion, was the weak link.
It's true. I think you're right.
And like I said, I would have just picked a much better player. But to your point, who is going to play ball with him if it involves something like that?
Yeah, because it's going to end up tarnishing their reputation. It's going to end up tarnishing the reputation. All right, let's tackle. I see 6 super chats. Let's see what we have here. Scott Blanche, you were not there at the beginning of the interview. Yes, that is my favorite quote from John Sweeney, and I'll do a video about that later, I guess. Okay. Let's see. Cat ACDC fan, you're hard to get through to lately. Did you see the email I sent you of my granddaughter in front of the Hollywood Boulevard org? I do remember seeing the photo that you sent. Thank you so much. I mean, I don't know what you wanted me to, I don't think you wanted me to like show the photo in a video or something, but yeah, I got the email and that was very, very cool. Thank you. Always good to see you in here. Cat ACDC fan. Okay, just a super sticker from Rusty, another super sticker from Rusty, and then Olga Nelson wants to tell us, I drove by the flag building last week. There were about 20 Sea Org folks who stared at me like a bunch of zombies. So weird, gave me a creepy feeling. Wow, you saw 20 people standing outside at the same time? I mean, that's a lot of people to be standing. That's pretty rare. I wonder if they were there doing a photo shoot or something, or
they were looking for Olga's crimes.
They were seeing all the they were like, look at all her body thetans. Wow.
Yeah.
They were practicing their OT 9 and 10 drills of getting rid of your blowing your BTs by inspection at a distance. There's a Scientology phrase. Okay. Yeah. Rusty finally figured out that he wanted to actually leave a super chat instead of a super sticker. Okay. Place in Indio, winter headquarters called WHQ. Gilman Hot Springs would be summer headquarters. Scottish Highlands Quietude to explain, why we called it SHQ.
Oh, thank you, Rusty.
Wow.
How cool is that? That's really cool.
The Scottish Highlands Quietude. Is quietude a real word?
It is a real word. And I can say that authoritatively because I have an English degree. I'm not a nuclear physicist.
Okay, so everyone, it says that quietude means a state of stillness, calmness, and quiet in a person or place. Well, I like that.
Outstanding point. Thanks, Rusty.
Fantastic. Okay, let's see. Oh, I see a couple more, so let me not ignore them. Andy Fabulous says, why doesn't Scientology put its city, Oz? Oh, okay. So the Scientology, like the Wizard of Oz. Why doesn't Scientology put its city on the huge unused property in Wyoming? Well, because that wouldn't be flashy. It also wouldn't be easy to get to. The Scientology bases do need to be near major airports, and they need to be easily accessible by Scientologists.
Yeah, and if I may make a point to Mr. Fabulous, and Andy is fabulous, if they put their Oz in Wyoming, it would make it much harder for Scientology officials to flee down to Cuba and, other places should the need arise.
There you go.
Because, face of the Florida, you get to the Keys and you can get down to Curacao, anywhere you need to go.
Yeah. Oh, Olga explained they were waiting for the bus. Oh, so you actually went down the side street. I thought you were just going down North Fort Harrison, but you took a turn onto that side street where all the Sea Org members line up there for the bus. Yeah, there you go. That's the best place for a Scientology Sea Org member sighting. And you will see them in herds. I'm surprised you only saw 20. Sometimes they make them wait inside the building until the bus pulls up, and then they all come flooding out of the separate doors simultaneously.
Yeah, and if you walk by when they're assembled, they will give you the death stare, the Scientology death stare. Like, no wonder if you're spying on them.
Absolutely, because it's not exactly a thoroughfare.
Yeah.
Okay, Susie Q with a super sticker. Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. That's all we are going to do this evening. Let me hide that. Thanks for joining me, Jeff. Everybody, if you're not already subscribed to Jeff's channel, it's called The Scientology Money Project. I have included a link to it in the description down below. All right, everybody. Well, it's 10 o'clock my time, or just thereabouts. So this is the last you're going to hear from me this evening. Have a wonderful evening, and talk to you tomorrow.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right here. Bye.